Hey everyone, Miranda Pitrone back here with you, and today I have this rich color palette with some pewters and pearl and some coral, and we're going to do this freehand spiral on one of Capcourier's new stones. These stones are so smooth. I'm so excited to paint on this one. So for the start off, I'm just going to paint my black circle background here, so I have a backdrop for my paint, and it's going to make it really pop, especially after we varnish the stone. So my circle here is 2.5, 2 3/4 inches background, just for reference point. And then I just put a little dot in the center there to give me a start, because if we start from the center out, you can kind of keep your symmetry. Starting with titanium white, and I'm just using the Etcher tool here to make my plus sign, and then my 45-degree angles, and then we're going to tuck some dots in between all of those. And starting off that way kind of divides up the space, so you can keep the spacing kind of organized. So I'm using a 2mm dotting stylus, and again I'm doing my plus sign here. And this is a really nice copper extreme sheen, and some of these too are pretty fluid, so sometimes I have to kind of shake them up good, or be careful when you're using them because they're going to spread a little bit more. You can see some of my dots spread pretty well here. Now coral blush, I just tucked in a couple dots of the coral blush, and now I'm switching to this lovely eggplant from the multi-surface line. And we're going to do some swipes from the outside of our circle all the way down into those copper dots. But I'm only going to do 4. So I'm going to do it the directionality of the stone. So it's an oval, so top and on the sides. This Etcher tool has a really nice sharp end opposite the gold end, so I'm just kind of take from the top of each swipe here down to the second coral dot. I'm just going to kind of sketch in an arc to give me a guideline, and we're going to put a guideline of the pewter, that is the extreme sheen pewter, and it actually looks like it has a dash of blue in it. It's a great shiny metallic. I love this one. So I'm just using the Etcher tool to kind of go along here where I sketched in just my guideline, and it's from the top of the eggplant swipe to the second coral blush dot. So we're going almost all the way over before the base of our other eggplant swipe down. And this will make it easier to serve as our guideline to start our freehand spiral. So this is the eggplant. I'm going to put a row of the eggplant dots now in here. And the eggplant is one of the multi-surface paints, so it is a little thicker. So sometimes you just have to tap it off the tool a little bit. And you can thin these down with a little bit of pouring medium or fluid medium if you want your paints a little bit thinner. But for these smaller micro dots, it works pretty fine. So you can see how each row around, I'm just tucking them right next to the other row. And I'm not stressing that they're all about the same size, so you don't really have to stress about keeping them right in line with the first row, because when you start off, you're actually at the edge each time. So they're not going to be perfectly next to one another. Alright, back to that coral blush again. This was one of my favorite colors of last year. I was so glad that coral was the color of last year, because I almost never ever use oranges or coral or any of that as a rule, and it really got me using it a lot last year, and it brightened up a lot of my pieces. So, and you're just letting the paint run off the tool at the end to get the smaller dots. So as I go, you can steal from some of these dots and get smaller ones, or you can redip it and then just let the paint run off the tool at the end. Now this one, just to kind of complement our blush, I'm using rose gold. And again, this is one of the extreme sheens. When you do the larger dots with this, I had a whole stone that I did using coral and rose gold, and it was absolutely gorgeous together. So just for keeping in mind for future color combinations. But you can see the string that is pulling up with these. That's one thing with the extreme sheens, is this can be a challenge because they get a little tacky, I guess is the only word I can think of. So you just have to make sure you pull it all the way up so that that string connection drops off. See? The temperature of my studio really affects the viscosity of my paints and the consistency, so you just kind of gotta go with the flow. All right, now I'm back to the pewter here. And it's the Pewter Extreme Sheen. Just a reminder, I'll put these all in the description as well, so you guys can have a list of the colors that I've used. Alright, and I think now I'm gonna grab the coral blush, and we're going to do some swipes of coral blush next to our eggplant. And I had a massive malfunction with my computer, but I was able to salvage it back, and we only missed the 2 swipes of coral here and one of the other ones, so that you didn't miss anything. It's just 2 swipes of coral next to the eggplant. So this is the rose gold I was talking about. And we're going to, again, go next to our coral blush here with some rose gold. And you can see the string that came up from it. So I'm actually going to switch to the metal end. And it gives me a little more control over where I'm pulling the paint. If I were to just swipe it using the gold end, it probably would have ran off. So you can see I'm just going to dot it here. And then flip the tool around so that the metal end is what I'm using here. And it takes a few more kind of pulling at the paint. It takes a little bit longer pulling at the paint, but it's worthwhile because you can control where the paint is going easier. And I just ordered some more of these because there's been so much interest in the Etcher tool, which is awesome. I think it's a great tool. Using it to etch out lines, I don't have to erase anything because once I varnish or even just a dab of water and the lines erase on the background of the black paint, you know, you're not erasing pencil or chalk marks or any of that. So I can't use it all the time, but when I can, I do. Let's see, I'm just pulling this rose gold out here. I probably could have shaken it up a little bit better in the bottle, but being a little impatient today, I guess. I have my moments too. Alright, so after that rose gold, we are actually going to grab that pewter again. So you can see I'm not using a ton of different colors. We have a good variety of light to dark and different colors here, but they all go pretty well together. And I found this color palette on my Pinterest. You can usually go to my color palette thing to see what I'm going to be working on next, because I have a huge collection of the palettes that I've been searching for as the most recent. But this one too, if you want to kind of control and pull it out here, similar, you just flip the end to the metal end and then pull it out. Now because this is an oval stone, it's not perfectly circle, so you know these ones are longer on the sides. I'm just going to put some tiny little white dots here using the metallic end in between the first row of white that we put down. It just gives it a little beaded look, kind of. Alright, so now underneath each of these I am going to tuck a little dot here of vintage pink. It's just a little bit lighter than the coral blush. And we're just going to kind of tuck the dots in here in between each of the copper. Alright, so now continuing on out here, I'm going to switch to the Pewter Satin Multi-Surface. So it's not the extreme sheen pewter, but you can see the difference. This one has a lot less bluish tint to it. It's more of a rich gray. And I'm just continuing along, following our guide of the arc that we started with. And you'll see too, as we get towards the end, because it's an oval stone, you just kind of have to adjust accordingly as to what you can fit in the space. I just decided to come back in here too and fill in the negative space. So you'll see too, some of the space I only have enough room for one dot, and some I have two, so I'll have 4 and 3. But it's all for the look. It's not for how many dots are you counting. See, this one needed 4. It's just for the look of filling in that space. So don't stress, don't count the dots. It's okay, we're enjoying this time. So these are just little petal marks that I'm tucking in here using the other end of my silicone oval dotting tool. It's literally just a flat end tool. So you could try popsicle sticks. I mean, I've dipped everything you guys have known. If you follow along with me and you've subscribed to me, you can tell from my videos I've used screwdrivers, eraser heads, like we've tried it all. So this is just the flat end of the silicone oval dotting tool. And I just tucked that pewter, that's the multi-surface flat pewter in there. And so lastly in this little space, we'll just use the metal end of the tool to put a little tiny swipe of titanium white in here to finish off that area. And that little pop of white too kind of gives it a little more movement with this spiral, because it draws your eye to the 4 spots where it's angled. And just going along the inner guide here of our metallic pewter. I'm going to try a big old dot of the rose gold in here. And then, while it's still wet, I actually put a drop of white in the middle too and swirled it around, but ultimately it's going to just be oyster pearl on top. I was just playing around, and that's what I do, just play around with paints and tucking them in and mixing them. But for now I'm going to go with the night sky out here, and what I'm going to do with these final parts so that our eye is not drawn to it as much is go with the darker colors to just kind of fill in the last of this space. Now you can see this space is not even, because again this is an oval, so we have more space. Like right here we have way more space than we did on the 2 top and bottom sides. So if you're a perfectionist, you just have to just let it go sometimes for some of these. I may only fit 3 rows, I may fit 5 rows, but it's just gonna be alternating with the pewter, the midnight sky, the eggplant, So not the coral, not the whites, and not the rose gold. Just kind of tuck the darker end colors of this palette in this final space to fill it in. And that way it doesn't, it sort of blends into the background. You don't have your eye drawn so much to the edges, and no one's gonna know, hey, you only did 2 dots of the eggplant, or even 1, and then the other ones didn't even have eggplant. I mean, you're gonna know because obviously I told you guys the little secret, filled you in, but you know, when you're looking at an art piece, are you actually counting? Did they do 12 dots? Oh, maybe, but not always. I think people can appreciate the aesthetics of it without the nitty-gritty details. There we go, our final stone. So this is what it looked like ultimately in the natural light. I have not varnished it yet, but the colors will really pop. I'm so thankful to one of you for asking to do more pewters, because that was a great palette and I searched for it and I'm actually loving this. I might use it again. I hope you all have a great day and happy painting.